Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach, and today we have with us Jeffrey Davidson, who is the founder of Leading Great Teams. Welcome to the program, Jeffrey.
Thanks so much for having me today, Mike.
You're welcome. Hey, so give me a little bit of your background. What is your career background, and then what led you to found Leading Great Teams?
Well, my background, in college, I didn't know what I wanted. I thought, I want to be a teacher. And then I thought, I actually spent time as a student teacher, and I'm like, I can't do all those bulletin boards. It drives me crazy. So I left teaching and went into business. And I worked my way up. I was in my early 30s leading a multi-million-dollar sales organization as the president. And I came to realize that studying leadership and being a leader are two different things.
Yeah.
And I was a good studier, but I wasn't a good leader. So I left it and went in consulting. And after a few years, a colleague said, hey, can you build a team for me? I'm like, sure, I can build and train your team. And then after a while, I became the leader of the team. And it's my firm belief that that team taught me how to lead, that those good relationships taught me how to do that. And then I've been taking my experience. I went back into consulting, and I found myself regularly fixing teams. And I'm like, I think there's something here. And as I explain my ideas to people, they're like, wow, this is all the parts. Talk to me. Tell me more. So that's what I do now. I help companies with their teams. I help make them great. And it brings me joy.
So I love that. That's awesome. Brings you joy. Reminds me of the Henry Ford quote, if you're doing what you love, you don't really have a job, or something to that effect. So that's really awesome. Makes me wonder this. If you are a team leader, sales leader, CEO, whatever that might look like, what are some red flags, triggers, or indicators that might make you think, we might possibly need some help fixing something? Because I would suspect that some teams are like, we're good to go, we're fine, because it's like the frog in the water, right? It's like you're just used to it, and then it gets a little worse, but you never notice it. So what would be some things that someone might realize in their day-to-day life with the team that might encourage them to go, maybe we should get someone to look into this?
That is an outstanding question. I love it. One of the first things I would find as an indicator is if you ask the team to do something, do they have a quick turnaround? In other words, are they regularly surprising you because their turnaround's quicker than you expected? If yes, you're in a good spot. If no, let's figure something out. The other is, if you ask your team to do something, are they confused about it? Do they deliver the wrong thing? Because they had a different understanding than you did. So that would be my second question.
Because maybe you didn't communicate properly.
Well, I'm sure you communicated great. They just didn't quite understand.
But when it comes down to it, you were saying one thing, thinking you were communicating. They heard something else, so there was some barrier, and it could be the way that maybe you're approaching it from do this, bullet point, do this. And maybe you should start off with the end result, like, hey, guys, we want to achieve this by this quarter. So to achieve that, let's, do this, and this. So maybe it's just a way that you approach.
Correct. And there's no doubt that how we communicate our high-level meaning, why we're here and what we're trying to accomplish, and how we define success is a really big part of it.
Yeah.
So that, to me, is one of the keys. There's a third one before we dive into that, and that is, if your team comes to you and says, hey, we have this kind of roadblock or impediment, can you help us remove it? That's a good sign. If they're regularly complaining about someone else on the team, that's a bad sign.
Yeah.
So either way, they're coming to you to say, help us. But is it more, hey, we figured out where we want to go next, love it? Are they saying, can you help us remove a problem? It's a different tone.
Isn't it the kind of, I guess it's cliche by now, but it's like, don't come to me with a problem, come to me with a solution to the problem. So start off by saying, hey, I noticed something. I've got an idea to fix it, but here's what's going on. And then my idea would be, and so too many times people just come in and they're complaining and griping, and you're going, man, The time it took you to complain and fester about that, you could have just fixed half of it or let it roll off your back or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
You can call it a cliche, but the reason it's a cliche is because it's true and it keeps on happening. Yeah. So how do we focus on those things? I did think of a fourth thing, and that is, does your team operate as a team, or is it a bunch of individual contributors you just call a team? Because I think the world has got so much volatility, so much uncertainty, so much chaos, so many people trying to destroy our market and take it away from us, that if you are operating purely as a bunch of individuals that you call a team, you will never perform as well as if you have a true team.
And I think that if you could fix that, it's kind of like 1 + 1 = 9. Right, because it's not just we have a well-oiled machine. It's more than that. And here's an example. Literally yesterday, this came up. I was meeting with one of my clients, and they've got about 30 employees, and they do they get these bids for contracts, and it's like mega. I mean, 2 weeks to put together one of these contract bid proposals. So anyway, one of the colleagues there said that she worked literally 10 hours on Sunday and like 8 hours on Memorial Day. And it's just what had to be done to get these projects out. And then there's like 4 or 5 other employees in that same department that were just, saying the same kind of thing. It's just scurry. So I went up to HR and I said, hey, here's an idea for you. Everybody back here is talking about, they're putting in great work, and the CEO is really wonderful. When there's a win, they celebrate, and there's, all of that. But I said, wow, I've just noted this spike recently. It would be really cool if you would find some local chair massage, kind of massage therapy, come in and say, hey, we're going to set up all afternoon, and, everyone, come in, rotation, sign up for rotation. The point is, that is an example of a team that there's not grumbling, and they know that when they put together a $400,000, $2 million proposal, everyone's like just putting the work in. But you have to recognize that too, so that they don't get burned out. So what do you do when you see that happening? How can you advise the team leader or the team as a whole to kind of stay fresh?
I think it's really important that we do realize that sometimes we ask a lot of our people, and we need to recognize them for that. And I like the idea that you went a little out of the box with the whole idea of a chair massage or other ideas. Part of the question is, what is the team like?
Yeah.
Too many leaders, unfortunately, are so busy that they don't know their people. And they might say, you know what, I am going to give everyone a night out, for this fancy event. There's this great singer coming to town, and I'd love you to go hear him. But they'd rather go to a truck rally. Yeah. So do you know your people well enough to reward them appropriately?
Yes.
Do you know your people well enough to say, this is how they want recognition? I've worked with someone, and they really want a quiet thank you. I work with some people who'd rather have a public thank you than a raise.
Yeah.
If you don't know your people, you're gonna make some missteps. So it's actually an investment of time into your folks to find out professionally and personally where they're at, so that you can respond appropriately.
I interviewed someone just today, and we were talking about a similar topic about knowing people and developing relationships. And we were talking about it in relation to giving gifts. So if you have a strategic alliance or a client, you should sporadically, consistently, but unexpectedly give gifts to them, and just to kind of stand out. And the same thing with what you just said, which is, reward, but reward the right way. Giving someone a day off, they might literally drive them up the wall to have 8 hours of no work. They might thrive in work, but they might love fill in the blank, whatever that might be.
Mm-hmm. So it's knowing enough about that we can make a huge difference for very few dollars. But if you don't know your folks, I don't know that it's going to work. So I appreciate anyone's making the effort, though. I will say that.
That's true. So what are some tips or ideas that people can think about in discovering what's important to their team? And don't say send out a survey with a fill in the blank. You know what I'm saying? So I mean, it can't be check these things, your areas of interest done, because now it's like, what? I'm just a number or a form.
You're right. I mean, surveys have a place, and you can learn a great deal from them. I think part of it is understanding people's communication style.
Yeah.
There are some tools out there that can be used to help with that. That help you understand people's preference. That could be. It could be that you've just done enough working with people that you can kind of, I don't want to say categorize because that might mean pigeonhole, but you can start to think about these people like more recognition like this. These people like more risk. These people want to avoid risk at all costs. So part of it is getting to know those folks there. Part of it is if you're having a regular check-in, and by goodness golly, I sure hope you are, we're talking to your people regularly.
Right. Not just yearly annual review.
Oh, we could go on a whole couple hours about that topic, couldn't we? So, but as you do that, being able to say, what have you done that you really liked, professionally or personally, that spend a minute or two, maybe even 3, as you talk with your people every week or two, and you'll be surprised how much you learn over the course of weeks, months, or years.
Have you ever read the book by Harvey McKay, Dig Your Well Before You're Thirsty?
Oh, I don't know that one. I know Harvey McKay, but not that book.
Well, excellent book, but I more importantly wanted to mention it. What you just said reminded me of the McKay 66, which in his envelope company, he would have his sales team have these 66 questions, and his team had to fill that out over the course of time. Again, not sending it out to their prospects going, fill this in for me. Okay, boss, got it filled out. It's like every interaction you have, pick 1 or 2 or see where the conversation leads, and don't just rattle off what is this and that. And then the important thing is, what do you do with it? Because it's kind of like knowledge is power is a false statement. Knowledge is potential power, but you got to do something with it. So if you have maybe not 66, but 6, 8, 10, 12 questions that you know about your team or your prospect or your client, now you can go, oh, you know what? I was traveling and I was in the airport and I saw this baseball cap from your alma mater and I picked it up for you. Here you go. And might have cost you $10, big deal. So I think that's a super important piece, is just to be aware and to have something consistent, some strategy in finding that info out.
I love that idea. And I want to say, just building on that, it doesn't take a big gesture. So when I was leading this team that taught me how to lead, a couple of the people were on a softball team. So me and the family showed up and cheered them on one night. A year earlier, I went to a choral performance. There was a woman in a choral group, and they were singing, music written for choirs in the 1600s. I had no idea what I was listening to. But my team loved it when I just showed up to cheer them on in some other setting. And I didn't do this once a month. I did this every couple of years. But it went a long way. A small gesture that's applied appropriately is huge leverage. Yeah. But the wrong gesture, you've literally stepped backwards.
Yeah, doing it for the wrong reason as well. Kind of like, hey, here's a gift. What? So I think you're exactly right. And I think that we get to our society and the way that we're wired with instant everything gives us the impression of, I need to fix my team. Here's what Jeffrey said. I must do XYZ, done. Team is fixed. Because it's kind of like remember the old movies, Jerry Lewis and the bellhop, and all of those where you would bring the bags up and stand there with your hand out, literally like, okay, tip me. So we're not doing these things so that the team works better. We're doing these things because A, it's the right thing to do, and B, it's the key to make the team work better.
Totally. I like so many other, people who work with teams, I'm in the middle of writing a book, and I've got a whole title and a structure, and it's partly written, and I'm thinking about recently in the last month retitling it to Give a Care or Get Out. Yeah. Because if you don't care as a leader, you ain't going to succeed. And what we're talking about is, how do we show we care? How do we show our team that they matter? Because you can't succeed without them. Yep. And if you don't think they matter, you're in for a world of trouble.
Yeah. That's huge. Well, let's think about something here. We've talked about a few ways that a team leader can notice, these might be some things that I need to address. Like, are they doing projects quickly and efficiently with a sense of urgency? Are they complaining too much? So if someone is listening to this going, I don't think my team is broken per se, but we could probably do with some polishing up. What's the best way they can reach out to you to learn more about what you provide, whether it's, a book, podcast, art, blog post, whatever that you offer? How can they reach out and connect with you?
Sure. I've done something just for podcasts, and that is I've got a website like everyone on the planet, and it's greatteamsltd.com. That stands for Great Teams Limited. So greatteamsltd.com, and then put the /more, MORE. And I've uploaded a couple resources for leaders to try with their teams. They're just short activities that you can use with your team to figure out, do you have a common understanding of what meaning is? Or do you have good feedback loops where you're talking to each other about how you're doing against expectations? A couple of things like that. So reach out there. Then if they want to go to the website and reach out, I'm happy to talk with large groups or do training for small groups. But just start off with looking at some of those free resources.
Perfect.
And start working with your teams. Because if your team gets better, I get happier.
Wonderful. Well, Jeffrey, thanks so much for coming on. It was great getting to know you and talk with you today.
Oh, it's been a pure delight, Mike. I appreciate what you're doing for the community.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.